what James Harden talked about on that podcast, I think I touched on it very, very briefly earlier when I was talking about the Carmelo thing. But James Harden was saying, once the media gives you a narrative in the league, it follows you. It follows you until you're done playing basketball. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but exactly what he said is, and I quote, once the media creates a narrative about somebody from the beginning of the year, they take that narrative and run with it for the entire of the year. So he was referring to the MVP and him not winning the MVP. And some people may say, well, man, James Harden just crying about it, man. He'll be okay. He just looking for excuses of why he did not win the MVP. So do you feel like this is an excuse, or is it actually reasonable? When I first heard this, I asked myself that question. Damn, is it an excuse, or is it actually reasonable? And then I thought of it. I said, you know what? James Harden is actually speaking facts, man. And to push what he said to a further extent, he's not only does the narrative follow you for that year, but it follows you almost for your whole career. When you think back to situations like Carmelo Anthony, I just talked about Carmelo Anthony and I keep bringing it up, but when you talk about Carmelo Anthony, that narrative of him being selfish, him only wanting money, it's still following him. They're using that as a gateway to say, yeah, that's why we don't want Carmelo on our team. Although he's proven that he has changed. When he was with Oklahoma City, he's proven that he's not like that anymore, that he's changed. When he was with the Houston Rockets, he's proved that he's okay with taking the back seat. He's okay with being a role player, a third, fourth scoring option. He's okay about that. He doesn't even have to be the primary scorer, primary ball handler, none of that. He's proven it. But yet people still hold him accountable for the mentality that he had when he was 24. Melo's not the only player who has dealt with that. James Harden went on to say how he doesn't want to get into the specifics about the narrative that the media has created about him. So I'm not going to speak from James Harden's behalf, but I'll speak on all the others who've been affected. Even look at Russell Westbrook. Sometimes these narratives, regardless of what you accomplish, they will never, ever leave a certain player. And that's wrong. Media has so much power in today's game, it is ridiculous. Whether you're good or not, you don't become an NBA star until media recognizes that you're good. There are plenty of players who are great role players, and there are players who should be all-stars, but because they don't receive the recognition or because their team is not winning, they don't get that stardom that other players have. But Russell Westbrook, his narrative, when he first came into the league, people talked about, oh yeah, man, Russell Westbrook, he hate passing the ball, he's selfish. He's not a good point guard. He's a shooting guard in reality. When you watch the game of basketball, he plays like a shooting guard. He's 6'4", 6'5" anyway, so he should be playing the two. That was the narrative we all got. This is a guy who's, after his first few years in the league, this is a guy who went on to average a triple-double each year, 3 years back-to-back, a triple-double. He's normalized putting up triple doubles in a game. When you watch Russell Westbrook, it almost becomes, you almost expect him to put up a triple double. Like he made it where if another player puts up a triple double, it's barely exciting. It's barely exciting. And if it's Russell Westbrook that puts up a triple double, people look at it as, oh, well, he did it again. There it is. Yeah, he did it. Yeah, he did it. Another triple double. He's normalized putting up a triple-double. But yet, if he makes one mistake in a playoff game or even a regular season game, people go back to that original narrative. Yeah, man, he's selfish. Russell Westbrook is selfish. He can't get it done. He can't get it done, man. He's too selfish. He's a shooting guard. He doesn't like passing the ball. But yet, this is a guy who's proven that he does not mind passing the ball, clearly, because he's putting up triple doubles. You can't put you can't put up a triple double without assists, but it would be much more difficult. And it's not like he's meeting the bare minimum of 10 assists a game. Some games he put up 15 assists, 16 assists, 14 assists. He's passing the ball clearly, and he's clearly helping his teammates as he's doing so. But because of the narrative that was created about him years and years ago, we always go back to it. People always go back to it. And I'm guilty. I'll even admit, like I was just talking about with Dwight Howard, I'll even admit that I'm guilty of following some of the narratives that the media has put out. Because for me, that narrative of Dwight Howard being soft, even though I really believe that it's true and it's not so much a false narrative, I still hold on to that. If I see Dwight Howard come out here in LA and he's playing soft, I'm going to go right back to that narrative. So I'm guilty. I 100% agree with James Harden about a narrative can follow a person for a full year. And yes, I took it to a further extent to say that not only will that narrative follow you for the full year, but it may follow you your entire career. There are very few cases where narratives have changed. I brought up JaVale McGee. His narrative was changed. He was once known as the clown of the league, or JaVale McGee, Shaqtin' a fool. He was once known as that. Now people take him very seriously now, and he's actually valuable to many different teams. He's a great big in the NBA. So the narrative does change, but it's very, 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 very slim. It's a slim chance that that will happen to every single player. When you think of D'Angelo Russell, what's the first thing you think of? We talk about, he's a great scorer. He averaged 20-something points this season. But there's always that one person that goes back, D'Angelo Russell, D-Lo, that guy's a snitch, man. Remember what he did to Nick Young? Oh, he's a snitch. I don't know, man. He's untrustworthy. He's not a good leader, as Magic Johnson said. But he ate his words clearly as the Brooklyn Nets did great things last season. But I guarantee, if he's with the Warriors and he makes a bad decision, everybody will go back. He's not a good leader. Or if he happens to play and he's the only star there, like Steph Curry is resting or something, and D'Lo is the only one, him and Draymond, and they start losing, I guarantee, D'Angelo Russell, man, he's not a good leader. I can't give it to him. He's not a good leader. He's not there. And it happens so many times, so often. Allen Iverson, he had a narrative. Nate Robinson. I don't want to go too far back into history because media has grown to become a very, very valuable force in the National Basketball Association. So I don't want to go too far back because things Michael Jordan had to, or things LeBron James have to deal with, Michael Jordan never had to deal with. Now you're liable to get criticized on the way that you tie your shoe. They will have a full discussion about it and really debate on if he should have took this loop under that string or whatever. They get really into it now. So the media is very, very, very judgmental, and they criticize about everything. But Allen Iverson, Nate Robinson, those guys fell in the category of being too small. They always had that narrative. He's too small. I don't know, man. I don't know. He's just not there. When Nate Robinson was trying to make an NBA comeback, that was like the first thing. I don't know if he can still do it. He doesn't have the bounce like he did a few years ago. Okay, he might not have the bounce, but he still has a good IQ. He's still going to draw attention to defenders. And he just might surprise you and dunk on somebody. But he can shoot the ball pretty good. Allen Iverson was a killer. He was a straight killer when he had the basketball in his hands. But yet everybody still brought up, he's so small. And then toward his career, we seen kind of the same thing that's happening to Carmelo Anthony. Oh, what a coincidence. What a coincidence. Allen Iverson. He's money hungry. He doesn't want to settle for not being a star. I don't want him on my team. Nah. The Detroit. I hate that the Detroit Pistons do this, and I hate that I got to talk about them in this way. But that was really the dumbest thing ever, to start Rodney Stuckey over Allen Iverson. This is an MVP player we're talking about. This is an all-star we were talking about. What and like Allen Iverson said, what all-star do you know, or what? I think it was multiple times he was an all-star. But what all-star you know comes off the bench? What MVP do you know that comes off the bench? I mean, it wasn't like AI was washed up, because he definitely could still hoop. He went to Denver, he did his thing. In Detroit, he did as much as he could. But the situation is still similar to Carmelo Anthony. And the main reason of why these situations are similar is because of the narrative all the way in the beginning that was established about both of these guys. Carmelo had that narrative. He wants too much money. He's not getting it, whatever. He wants too much money, money hungry, selfish, doesn't like to pass, and it's still sticking with him today. Allen Iverson had that same thing, and people had a tough time trying to put him on a team. It was all kind of blame going around. It's not so much with huge stars, because they say anything about them. Like LeBron James, they say anything about him, and I mean, most of the time he ignores it. But they say anything about him. So their narratives are rarely rarely kept in the same place. He's one of those players who doesn't really have a narrative, but a lot of guys do. And it's a shame that you have to accomplish so much and do so much off the court in order for the media not to come up with a narrative. Even Kevin Durant, the best basketball player in the game today. Even Kevin Durant, they talk about him as being very sensitive. They say Kevin Durant is sensitive. Okay, who cares, man? Who cares if he's a sensitive person off the court? Who cares? I'm not watching that. I don't care how sensitive he is off the court when I'm watching basketball. When I'm watching basketball, I see a killer. I see somebody who's on the court, an assassin, can't be stopped, cannot be guarded by a single person when I watch him play basketball on the court. So who cares? Who cares if he's doing something off the court and he's sensitive? You ask him a question and he don't want to answer it. Oh, well. Oh, well. You all in his business. I guarantee you wouldn't want nobody all in your business every day of the hour, every day of the week. It would get annoying. And sometimes him and Kyrie Irving, because he's also another one that gets the sensitive narrative. But who cares? When they play basketball, that's the part that you should be focusing on, the basketball aspect of it. When they play basketball, they both do their thing and they both go off, and they look far from sensitive when they play basketball. So I don't get why that becomes a huge problem. I 100% agree with James Harden. 100% agree with him. In terms of him losing the MVP race because of that narrative, he didn't really share what his narrative was around the league. I guess things that I've heard was him chasing triple doubles, him playing into the referees, things like that. Yeah, all of that stuff is. You can always talk about that, yeah, and come up with excuses of why he didn't win it and why he's not the best and all that. But honestly, if we're speaking facts about it, James Harden should have won the most valuable player, and that's all honesty, man. When you take, I look at it from the most valuable player award. I look at it as you take James Harden off that Rockets team, that team does not get into the playoffs at all. This was a guy who almost averaged 40 points in a single season. There are only a handful of guys who've gotten close to doing that.